Jimmy Kimmel breaks silence in first post since his suspension with photo of TV legend Norman Lear, who was on Nixon's enemies list. The post comes hours before Jimmy Kimmel Live will return to the air on Tuesday, September 23rd. Jimmy Kimmel has returned to social media for the first time since his late-night show's hiatus. On Tuesday, September 23rd, the 57-year-old shared a photo of himself with the late Norman Lear on Instagram. "Missing this guy today," Kimmel wrote alongside the picture. A prolific TV writer, producer and activist, Lear died at 101 in December 2023 and is best known for creating the groundbreaking comedy series, All in the Family, which broached social and political issues deemed controversial at the time. During an episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live on December 17, 2023, Kimmel got emotional during his tribute to Lear, calling him not only a giant in the world of television, but a great man who was one of the most important and impressive people I ever had the pleasure of meeting. "He changed situation comedy in the best possible way," Kimmel said of the TV writer. "He taught us so much about so many serious things, always making us laugh while he did it, and everyone who works in or even watches television owes him a great debt. Especially me." The post comes hours before Jimmy Kimmel Live returns to the air. On Monday, September 22nd, the Walt Disney Company issued a statement confirming that the show will return on Tuesday, September 23rd. "Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive," the statement read, referring to comments Kimmel made on September 15th about Charlie Kirk's assassination. "We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday." Kimmel's photo choice is notable given Lear was famously outspoken in his opposition to the Federal Communications Committee and its rulings during his own career. In 1976, following the FCC's nationwide ruling about family viewing time, which required that all programming shown between 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time be suitable for everyone, regardless of age, Lear was one of many big names to co-sign a lawsuit against the government organization. The suit, which was brought by Lear and the Writers Guild of America, was a success and a protection of the right to freedom of speech, as a California district court ruled that the family viewing time policy violated the First Amendment. Kimmel has recently been criticized by the current FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, following his monologue on September 15th. "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it," Kimmel said. In between the finger-pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism, but on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this, he continued, as a clip cut into Kimmel's broadcast, showing President Donald Trump, 79, taking questions from reporters after the shooting, one of which offered their condolences for the death of the president's friend, Kirk. When asked how he was holding up, Trump replied, "I think very good, and by the way, right there where you see all the trucks, they just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House." Trump continued discussing the ballroom plans, saying the result would be a beauty. The cameras then cut back to Kimmel, who said, "Yes, he's at the fourth stage of grief, construction." In the wake of Kirk's murder, Kimmel offered condolences to Kirk's family on social media, writing, "Instead of the angry finger-pointing, can we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all the children, parents and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence." During an interview on Benny Johnson's podcast, Carr called Kimmel's comments on his September 15th show truly sick, and said the FCC had a strong case to hold the host and the company he works for accountable if that company didn't take action on Kimmel. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," he said at the time. "There are calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this." Carr also addressed the individual licensed stations airing ABC content across the country, telling them it's time for them to step up and take action as well. Kimmel's show was pulled from the air indefinitely on September 17th. An ABC spokesperson confirmed to People. Both Nexstar and Sinclair, the broadcasting company that makes up the nation's largest ABC affiliate group, announced they would preempt the show on their affiliate stations. Following the news of the show's return, both declared they will continue preempting the broadcast. Amid Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom on Thursday, September 18th, Trump, 79, shared his thoughts about Kimmel's hiatus and characterized it as a firing. Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great man named Charlie Kirk, Trump said. Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person, he had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. You can call that free speech or not, the president continued. He was fired for lack of talent. Kimmel finally broke his silence after weeks of speculation. It wasn't with a fiery statement or a dramatic video. Instead, it was a quiet but pointed gesture. A single photo posted on social media of himself standing alongside Norman Lear, the late, great television producer and activist whose legacy shaped not only entertainment but politics. Lear, who famously landed on President Richard Nixon's notorious enemies list, became Kimmel's subtle weapon of choice in reminding fans and critics that comedy has always been political, risky, and deeply personal. The timing of this post could not have been more deliberate. Kimmel's suspension from ABC, a network that had stood by him through years of late-night satire, had sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Details surrounding his punishment had remained murky, with insiders hinting that the host had stepped on toes one too many times with his increasingly sharp critiques of political figures. While some fans begged him to fight back loudly, Kimmel instead let a photograph of himself with Lear do the talking. A silent statement, louder than words. In the photo, Kimmel isn't grinning with his usual boyish smirk. Instead, there's a quiet reverence as he looks toward the camera, his arm draped lightly around Lear. The image feels less like a celebrity selfie, and more like a passing of the torch. A reminder that Norman Lear, with shows like All in the Family and The Jeffersons, used humor to shine a light on America's cultural tensions long before late-night monologues became political platforms. By invoking Lear, Kimmel was effectively saying, if Lear could take on Nixon in the 1970s, surely I can withstand modern backlash. It was a way to frame his suspension not as a punishment for being reckless, but as proof that he is following in the footsteps of a man who never backed down from speaking truth to power. Norman Lear, the rebel behind the laugh track. Lear wasn't just a television giant. He was a cultural revolutionary. His shows tackled racism, sexism, poverty, and war, all while delivering punchlines that had audiences laughing through their discomfort. Nixon reportedly detested him for it, adding Lear's name to the infamous list of enemies he wanted surveilled and targeted. To Kimmel, posting Lear's photo was more than nostalgia. It was a statement of solidarity across generations of comedy. Lear had been vilified, yet history proved him right. Kimmel seems to be betting that time will do the same for him. The suspension that sparked a firestorm. Kimmel's suspension had become one of the most talked about stories in entertainment, precisely because it blurred the line between comedy and censorship. Fans debated endlessly online. Was ABC bowing to pressure from political figures, or was this truly about network standards? Some insisted the suspension was temporary theater, meant to cool things down. Others feared it signaled a chilling effect on comedy itself. What few could deny, however, was that Kimmel had become one of the last outspoken voices in late-night television unafraid to skewer both political parties, even if it cost him. That risk-taking, once celebrated, seemed to now hang over his career like a storm cloud. Why this photo matters. For celebrities, breaking silence after scandal often involves carefully crafted statements, apologies, or even rebranding campaigns. Kimmel chose the opposite. By keeping words to a minimum and letting Norman Lear's presence do the talking, he cleverly shifted the conversation. Suddenly, it wasn't about what joke went too far or which politician was offended. It was about comedy's larger role in democracy. The photo reminded his audience that comedy has always been dangerous. Lear endured hate mail, boycotts, and government scrutiny, yet his shows are now considered classics. Kimmel's photo suggests he sees himself as part of that lineage, whether ABC or his critics like it or not. Fans and critics react. Within minutes, Kimmel's post set off a social media frenzy. Supporters hailed him for his subtle brilliance, calling the image a masterclass in silent protest. Memes flooded Twitter and Instagram, pairing Kimmel's photo with Lear's most biting quotes about politics and satire. Critics, however, weren't impressed. Some dismissed the post as performative, accusing Kimmel of hiding behind Lear's legacy instead of owning his own missteps. Others argued that invoking Lear's name was an overreach, that a suspension from a network show was hardly comparable to being targeted by a sitting president. But perhaps that was the point. Kimmel wanted people talking. And he succeeded. The symbolism of Lear on Nixon's list. Nixon's enemies list was a peculiar historical artifact, filled with journalists, activists, and cultural figures who dared to oppose him. Lear's inclusion symbolized the power of television to influence public opinion in ways politicians could not control. By aligning himself with Lear, Kimmel was drawing a direct line between past and present, suggesting that his suspension was not just a personal setback, but part of a larger tradition of silencing outspoken voices. It's a bold comparison, but in Kimmel's world, boldness has always been the point. What comes next for Kimmel? Kimmel's future at ABC remains uncertain. Will the network reinstate him, banking on his loyal fanbase and the media storm his absence has created? Or will this suspension mark the beginning of an exit strategy, with Kimmel eventually moving to streaming platforms or launching his own digital show where no corporate strings can pull him back? For now, he seems content to let speculation swirl while dropping breadcrumbs like his Lear photo. If anything, the post suggests he isn't retreating. He's sharpening his edge, preparing for whatever comes next. Lear's legacy as Kimmel's compass. What makes this moment so powerful is not just the photo itself, but the underlying message. Lear never apologized for making people uncomfortable, and neither will Kimmel. Comedy, at its best, has always poked at society's wounds, forcing laughter in places where anger or fear usually reside. For Kimmel, Lear represents a compass, a reminder to stay the course, no matter the cost. And in choosing that particular image for his first public post, he has all but declared that suspension won't silence him. If anything, it has emboldened him.